And we're live. Hello and welcome to all of our Zero viewers to this third night of this one entitled Financing Quidditch, Making Your Money Go Further. And today I'm your host, Matt O'Connor. I know some of you might be expecting Abby, but Abby's not available, so they had to go down the list of Junior Quidditch players until they finally found me somewhere near the bottom. So sorry guys, you're stuck with me. With me today is Falmouth and Hughes and Keele's Hannah Watts. This is, of course, it was a monthly, it's now bi-monthly discussion panel hosted by the Quidditch Post and supported by QuidditchUK, the governing body, to enable members of the community to come together and share their knowledge and expertise. So to that end, I think we should probably give our guests a little bit more, shed some more light upon them. So we'll start with Hannah. If you want to explain some more about yourself.
Okay, I'm Hannah. I've recently finished my term as president of Keele Quidditch Club. I've been playing for 3 years now, so I've got quite a lot of experience, and I guess the reason that I was invited for this particular talk was because at the beginning of my term as president, Keele was in debt with a lot of money. We were on the brink of closing, and we managed to raise over £1,500 in a couple of weeks, which completely turned our club around and meant that we could carry on playing. So I guess I know a little bit about fundraising some money. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say. I chase.
£1,500 is incredibly impressive there.
Yeah.
So well done to
you.
And now, of course, we have Gavin from Falmouth.
Well, I'm the vice captain and vice president of Falmouth University Quidditch Club, and I'm quite a Brighton student, keeper. I think I said that. No, I didn't say that. And I suppose I was invited here because I was the only Falmouth player that was willing to do it. Yeah, it kind of got thrust upon me by the rest of the committee, and I suppose if I'm to be the vice president in the coming year, I suppose I need to take on these kind of duties and take it in my stride. So I guess that's why I'm here to discuss Quidditch finances.
Yes, and I suppose it's very useful to actually have a Falmouth player with us because Falmouth are, of course, one of the most isolated teams. The only other team that is quite as isolated is, of course, my own side, St Andrews, who, as many know, I captained the side during the 14-15 season, and obviously with captaincy, I have a passing knowledge of finance and how important it is to sort of get that cash money flow in if you want to get to tournaments at a decent, without having your players having to pay through the nose. So, yeah, with that out of the way, I think we'll move on to today's questions. So we started off with some things that have been put to us by QuidditchUK. And the first one is what expenses are there for tournaments? How can you mitigate them? And what have you done to mitigate these expenses in the past? So who wants to start with that one? Let's start with Hannah, I think.
Okay. Well, I guess the main expenses are if it's a stay-away tournament, accommodation. Because although sleeping on floors is great, if you actually want to do well, you kind of want to sleep in a bed, or at least in your own space. And then transporting to get to these tournaments is a hell of a lot of money. I mean, Keele ourselves, we're quite lucky because we had a few people old enough to drive minibuses, and it's much cheaper for us to hire a minibus for a weekend, pay the cost of petrol, than it is to send everybody on the trains or via cars, which we don't have access to. partly because Keele University doesn't like students having cars there, so not many students have a car with them. But we found that obviously if you can book in advance, then you can get a lot of good deals on accommodation such as Travelodge and things, because normally Quidditch isn't happening in a high season holiday weekend. So if you know well enough in advance, then you can get a good deal on that. And then transport, if you can work it out early enough, again, trains if you can book them in advance, or if you can get a minibus or something, even if it's just working with another one. I mean, Summer Cup last year, we collaborated with Leeds and we picked them up on the way so we could cut the cost even more. Little things like that. Food as well. We eat a hell of a lot.
Food, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely a big expense there is eating. Gavin, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I'm a massive fan of Scout Halls, being a Falmouth player. To be honest, I think it's comfortable enough. Sleeping bag on the floor of a Scout Hall, if it's carpeted or whatever it is, you're going to get a good enough sleep to still play relatively well at the tournament, and the amount less money you're spending to stay there than in any hotel of any sort, I think is definitely worth it in the long run. It just puts so much less of a sort of strain on each individual player going to the tournament. If because I found accommodation costs tend to be quite a large sort of portion of the money you have to pay overall to get yourself to a tournament. And I mean, like at BQC, I remember one of my teammates saying, I can't remember which team it was, but they were talking to someone about their accommodation costs, and their accommodation costs per person came to more than our entire tournament expenses per person. So when you do kind of bite the bullet and go with a Scout Hall, it gives you a lot more freedom for spending on other things that might be useful when you go to tournaments. So I'm a massive Scout Hall fan.
That's I suppose that's one way to mitigate costs. I did sharing. I think you said, Hannah, that's definitely something that I know we've done with Edinburgh, with of course most tournaments being on the way. Edinburgh's on the way because who holds a tournament north of St Andrews? No one. Literally no one.
Yeah.
So Edinburgh's always on the way, so they're a useful little tool. To sort of sum that up, do you have like a top tip? A top tip, so for making it cheap. I know, Gavin, you said Scout Halls. Do you have like if you could do one thing to make it cheap and you had to do everything else, sort of?
I guess I'd say commute if possible. So obviously, like for yourself and Falmouth, not really possible. Nowhere is commuting distance. But for instance, anywhere in the Midlands, don't go and stay in Nottingham if you only a 45-minute drive, because actually it's probably going to be about half an hour when you get out of the little Travelodge that you're staying in and trying to get away. If it's only sort of an hour or so from where your uni is based, because then you don't have to pay accommodation. Or get in there as early as possible. As soon as you know a tournament's happening, get on to booking some accommodation, because then you'll be able to get the cheap stuff before they whack the prices up.
But do you have any other big tip, Gavin, other than Scout Halls?
I would say Scout Halls is the big one, but also if your student union offers minibuses or whatever, then take that. That's much cheaper than often much cheaper than try a train or hiring a coach or anything like that. But I know not every union necessarily has minibuses at their disposal, but that's another way of cutting costs together.
Yeah, I know a lot of teams, Bangor especially, love a minibus.
Yeah.
Some teams obviously not affiliated with a university. Other teams, not university teams, say Taxes or Velociraptors, who are starting up next year, would have to hire one from a hire company, which would be probably still cheaper, to be honest. I would say a coach is always a good one. Hire a coach if you can get two teams on it, 50-seater coach. You're taking around 40 people. That normally works out fairly cheap, especially if you're going. Yeah. What we did when BQC was in Nottingham. So that's it's 150 to 100 miles. I know Falmouth go to Highlander, but I believe you fly to Highlander, don't you?
We flew to Highlander this past year, but a lot of that came out of the players' pockets because it was too early in the year to really effectively fundraise. So that was the sort of tournament that the players kind of took the brunt of the economic impact rather than the club. But, so it's maybe not entirely representative of our fundraising skills.
Very interesting that. So if we move on to the next sort of question is actually quite a useful little thing. So for fundraising, public fundraising, how do you make a good fundraiser? How do you sort of stay on top of organising it, and how do you get your publicity out to get your fundraisers so they earn lots and lots of money? I know that's sort of 3 questions in one. So we'll start off with what makes a good fundraiser, what is a good fundraiser, and we'll start with Gavin this time.
We're not a very adventurous team with it. We just do a lot of bake sales, but they seem to be quite effective because for the bake sale you don't need to do much publicity because people walk past a stall, they see cakes. That's about as much as publicity as you need. Whereas some other sort of more elaborate things you might need to have posters and plan things in advance and so on. Whereas I found that you can kind of quite impromptu set up a bake sale, but the downside is that it's a bit of a strain on the players to have to buy ingredients and bake all this stuff, and perhaps they're more efficient methods of raising money. But that's how I made my first fund at least by bake sales.
Yeah, I know we did a bake sale actually, I think the trick with bake sales is if you do them in a high traffic area. So we did it in the physics building of our university, which everyone goes to. It's maths, chemistry, it's medicine. Everyone walks through. It's a very high traffic area, and we made what we wanted to and then some. But Hannah, with your fundraising expertise, making $1,500, what makes a good fundraiser? Go.
So I guess we did lots of little things to start off with. So we had all the bake sales, quizzes, all that kind of stuff. But we needed to make the money, so it came to coming up with an idea that was a bit different, that no one had really done before, but would target a lot of people. So I came up with the gunging idea whilst talking to Mel. And essentially for that one, it was an incredibly simple thing. It didn't require much cost, a couple of packets of custard, very cheap to run. It was all about the advertising for this one. So it was all about getting the word out there. So we used everyone in the club's social media presence to get it out to their friends, their families and stuff. We did obviously a lot of posting in QuidditchUK, in Quidditch Europe. Luckily, as we're a university base as well, Mel posted it in the Keele alumni group, and the alumni of Keele love to support any sort of random societies that need a bit of help. So we managed to get one really generous donation of £350 from somebody. Yeah, I mean, that person, they're very lucky to have £350 just hanging around that they want to give to a Quidditch club. But it's all about targeting the right kind of audience. So if it's a very Quidditch-based thing, you're obviously going to be targeting Quidditch players, because the general public, although they may find it interesting, they may not really care. Cakes is brilliant because it targets everyone. Everyone likes cake, pretty much. So you've got to just think who your audience is and then target the right kind of people, whether that's through little videos and posters and stuff, or posting all over Facebook. I think that's where the key is to get that actual proper success in some of these cases, and give something back. People aren't going to give money for nothing.
Very true. You are sort of going to have to give them like a service or a cake.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone loves cake.
And as cheap as you can make that service, the more money that you then get as profit. So such as the gunging, it didn't cost very much to do, but it was hilarious to see people get gunge thrown over them. It wasn't hilarious to have it done, really. But in terms of that, we maybe took from, well, I mean, I donated the custard myself, but I think that cost maybe £3 total or something. So everything was profit from that. We didn't spend, £100 hiring a hall, selling tickets, all that kind of stuff in the hopes that we get 300 people come and watch. And if we don't, then we make no money or something like that. like my mythology is minimum input, maximum output. So the least you can do, and then the better you get.
Yeah, you make it sound very simple. I suppose, not to denigrate anything you've done, but Keele do benefit from being you very established side. You guys have been around from the start, pretty much, and you've got people like Morton and Nell and Tom Norton as well, who are very well known, and quite frankly, people wouldn't mind paying a fiver to see him get gunged, because it's the thing.
Who wouldn't? Yeah.
If I could stick a fiver into gunge, certain people, then my mates was like, I'd chuck a fiver into gunge your friend.
Exactly. So you've got to kind of work with what you've got, I guess. So if you know that you've got a player that people particularly, I guess, like Bang, they've got Jay. So with the head shaving thing, they managed to raise a lot of money for that charity just because they are well-known people within Quidditch. So if you've got somebody like that, exploit them, because as long as they have to go along with it, obviously, because it's free. There's no point in paying to get some sort of celebrity actor to try and endorse you when you can do it with your celebrity, big quotations there, celebrity player, who will do it for free, essentially.
The Enix.
Yeah.
In Quidditch.
Basically.
That's a good point with Jay Hobbs, actually, because a lot of people enjoyed that.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of people enjoyed that, and I
and we're all kind of like seeing people humiliate themselves, don't we?
Yeah. No, it's just very funny to play against him with his shaved head.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we'll move on to part 2 of question 2. How would you stay on top of organising a fundraiser? Do you sort of make it simple? Do you split it up into lots of little tasks for let 6 or 7 people do it? So any tips on how to organise a fundraiser, Gavin?
Well, I mean, because we mostly do bake sales, what we tend to do is sort of 1 or 2 people will take responsibility for organising the space to do it and make sure we've got the equipment like knives and a table and so on for setting up an actual stall, and then others will take responsibility for actually baking and just kind of coordinate the two, so that no one person's doing too much. Just it's basic common sense, really, I suppose. Just make sure that nobody's taking the brunt of the thing on their own. Work as a team to get the whole thing working effectively. And I suppose that applies to any fundraiser, even though we really just sort of focus on stalls selling things.
Yeah, I think that's what we did. We just sort of split it up really between whoever was willing to get stuff to make, buy stuff, do the work, and we found it worked very well if you sort of split everything up. How did you sort of get the organisation down for the gunging more than anything else? Because that seems like it's quite a big task.
Yeah.
How did you organise that?
Well, I guess after I came up with the idea, so me and Mel were talking about it, and then first things first was get everyone on board. So obviously you can't gunge Ben Morton if he doesn't want to be gunged. So it was first off ask the people. Once we knew that they were willing to, I had my own committee, so I told them this was an idea, just the Keele committee in general, that this was going to happen, and obviously we need the support of everyone, so I'd really appreciate it that they helped. Piers and Judith are really good on social media, so they kind of took over that side of things. Joe's good at money and stuff, so he kind of helped that, being treasurer. And then it was just a case of anyone in the club who kind of had an area of speciality would use that, so such as social media, they could get it out there. I made a couple of posters up, which got used a bit, but we didn't really kind of fly it around everywhere at Keele because it was much more a Quidditch-related thing. Ben Morton doesn't mean anything in Keele University, really, but in Quidditch he's a big name, and to his friends he's a big name, so it's much more using people's friends and Quidditch players rather than our actual university. But I guess it was a case of just delegating the little tasks, so such as on the day of the gunging, some people were making the gunge up, some people were doing the filming, some people were doing other things such as making sure that we all had towels and stuff, and everyone just got involved and chipped in whichever way they could. everyone really wanted to try and make the money though as well. So I guess that helped because we were all quite enthusiastic. So if somebody wanted to do something, if they just let them, as long as it's not going to be detrimental, it can only have a positive impact. Yeah.
So yeah, long and short of it, delegate, delegate, delegate. Break everything off into little tiny tasks.
And you may not even have to do anything yourself.
Excellent. No, that's the art of leadership delegation. That's what I found anyway.
Yeah.
And so the final thing, how do you publicise your fundraisers? I suppose we've actually already covered this really. The other two. I mean, cake publicises itself, obviously, because it's cake.
Yeah.
And if it's good cake, people will tell their friends, oh, did you know so-and-so is having cake in the physics building? Oh, are they now? Let's go and get cake. It's something that works by word of mouth. Gavin, do you find that sort of thing is true for Falmouth bake sales, or do you have to sort of go out there and say, we're doing cake, come and buy cake from us?
We occasionally stick something on QuidditchUK halfway through our sale, just in the middle, saying come to the exchange and get a cake, you know, just to beef up the numbers come through. But there's so many people going past for lectures and whatever anyway that it's almost a redundant thing to do, because if you pick your spot well enough, there'll be a click that we don't really necessarily need to promote it further than that.
Yeah, so for cake, you don't need to publicise cake. Cake will publicise itself, especially if you pick your area right. I suppose the same is true of Gunging, Ben Morton, and
pretty much.
Tom.
It's just more getting them to publicise it, because Ben was very reluctant to, because he knew a lot of people would want to pay to have him gunged, so he didn't want to post. But yeah, it's essentially, it kind of advertises itself, and cake is always good.
Yes, I suppose. Yeah, so social media, QuidditchUK's something that I hadn't considered actually. That sounds quite good.
No, we don't really use it much, so I guess it depends what is your kind of your university or your local area's kind of common social media base. If it's Twitter, use Twitter. If it's QuidditchUK, use that. If it's Facebook, use that. Not really much else. That's quite quick, is there?
I think a lot of people. I mean, I don't, but I think a lot of people do use QuidditchUK. When we did beach Quidditch, we got on QuidditchUK from some randomer on the beach, which was nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely something to consider. And there we go. I've learned something during this live stream. Thank you, Gavin. And so yeah, that's public fundraising for teams. And now we should move on to the final bit of the QUK Direct discussion, and that is the fundraising from organisations. So can you sort of get cash from your union? So you know, can you talk to them, get strategies? Can you get almost just like sports funding from your union, your athletics union? So yeah, I don't know what the situation is with you guys, but Hannah, do you have any sort of connections with the Keele Student Union?
So we are a society under the Student Union, which means that I don't know if other unis have it, but on Society Sign-Up Day, anyone who signs up on the 2 days of Society Sign-Up, you get like an extra £1 or something for each person who signs up, which is always a nice little boost, because you can kind of get all the freshers in who kind of just sign up willingly for every society, pay and never turn up again, but you get sort of £4 or £5 from them, which is a real nice boost at the start of each term. But other than that, we don't get any help. They used to do things such as society stripes and things, but due to just lack of general funding within the university, it all got cut. We managed to get all the stripes, but that was before I even started. And our athletics union refuses to have anything to do with Keele, to the point of that if we try and train on the athletics ground, they kind of go a bit mental at us, and things kick off. So the athletics union is not a help. The student union tries to help as much as they can, but with all societies it's a little bit of a struggle.
Yeah, that's quite a familiar situation. I think we've well, it's not quite as bad because we have managed to book out AU fields for Scottish Cup. which was useful. We had to pay money. Well, we didn't because it was for charity technically. So Rag Week paid for it. But yeah, it's we are in a similar boat, but we take sort of subs directly. So we don't really get any help from the SU, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Gavin, I think aren't Falmouth part of their athletics group?
Yeah, we're a society under the FXU, which is the Falmouth and Exeter Student Union. So we actually have a sort of arrangement with them that if that whatever we fundraise, they match, which is quite good. So that's how we paid for our coach to get the is that we did a lot of fundraising and then they essentially subsidised part of it as well. Yeah, so we have quite a useful relationship with our union.
Yeah. Sorry, what were you saying?
I was rambling.
Yeah, so you know, student union, I feel it's very, very mixed. It depends on how you feel, because I'm fairly certain that Oxford are a member of their sports union. I'm fairly certain other teams are as well. If you know I'm wrong, tell me comments, because we're going. But yeah, we the student union, it's a little bit hit and miss, I feel. I know a lot of we're looking to it. Bangor as well are sponsored by an outside thing. They're sponsored by the Harp pub, which I assume is a pub in Bangor, which I think a lot of teams should look into a bit more, sort of sponsorship-wise. Are Keele and Falmouth sponsored at all?
We're not currently sponsored, however, I think it is something that the new committee should look into. The only issue that we kind of have, it's not a massive one, is that because Keele's very set away from any town or city, we don't actually have anything other than sort of the union or a couple of the union-based pubs within Keele itself that are actually that could potentially provide sponsorship, which would then just get essentially going to the student union and saying sponsor us, which they wouldn't do. Though we'd have to go a little bit further afield, which I think is possible, but it would just be a bit harder. What we did manage to do, though, is that the local councils, Alice, when she was treasurer, not this past year but the year before, she wrote to them and applied for every kind of sports bursary, social bursary, anything that was going, and we managed to get a couple of funding things from them, just at her looking in the thing, what they had out there, and just going, well, we half fit the criteria, or we fit the criteria, so I'll fill it in, and if we get something, we get something. If we don't, we don't. And we managed to get a little bit of money in from that, which was really good, because I wouldn't have even necessarily thought of going to like Newcastle Council and asking. That's
Newcastle on the line, for those of you confused.
Yes.
I'm from sort of like 20 miles away.
Yeah, no, everyone's like, but you Keele, Newcastle, what?
For those of you confused, Newcastle on the line, it's near Stoke. Like, don't worry about it. So yeah, I mean, suppose the worst they can do is say no.
Exactly. And the best, you could get a couple £100, which buys you some hoops, some balls, some transport, whatever.
So I suppose that also covers what sort of grants teams exist for teams to apply for. Although, how would you create a good application for that, would you say?
I think what Alice focused heavily on was the fact that obviously gender, getting people who aren't necessarily otherwise caring about sports being sporty, the fact that anyone can go and goal ref, so you know you can get lots of people involved who wouldn't necessarily do sports, which obviously is great for fitness and the reducing obesity levels and all that kind of stuff. Just gender and sexuality and all that kind of stuff. The fact that it's a very unique and individual sport, to just play on the fact that Quidditch is different and use that as its advantage. Maybe don't mention the fact that, you know, we're all struggling for a bit of money and you might get 48 other applications from Quidditch clubs coming in, but mention the fact that the kind of things that make us unique and highlight us, because that's what the government kind of like, or the local authorities, something that's different, that is promoting kind of well-being and inclusivity.
They love a bit of participation. Gavin, do you have anything to add?
Well, we're currently sponsored. We have a kit sponsored by the Cornish Bakehouse, who are a pasty company.
Nice.
So we're fulfilling all the stereotypes. Yeah, and that was just handy because it means that the cost of getting our new kit was significantly reduced by the fact that we had this kit sponsor. I'm not sure whether we've got them sponsoring us again next year. We might do, but sort of that's the sort of something that's happening with us. Is we've got we're looking at a couple of local companies, and it seems to me that sort of small businesses particularly are often quite keen on sort of getting involved with this kind of thing, because it's, you know, when you get a sport as strange as Quidditch, it's instant local paper recognition for a company that sponsors a Quidditch club. Like we had quite a lot of coverage in the sort of Falmouth papers when we first had a deal with the Cornish Bakehouse, and that obviously was quite appealing to them. And, yeah, when it comes to looking for sponsors, kind of look outside of the obvious ones, because these smaller businesses tend to sort of thrive on the sort of strangeness of the sport, and how it's kind of outside of the norm. But I think that was potentially something that helped us get our Cornish Bakehouse. I mean, I wasn't personally involved in getting the sponsor because I was just a very fresher at the time, but that's my understanding of it.
That's quite a good point, actually. Yeah, local papers, I suppose. No publicity is bad publicity, after all, I suppose. Bidwell is currently editing as I speak. I suppose you just answered that, actually. What should teams do to find a sponsor? Would you say you just sort of email them and ask, would you like the opportunity to sponsor them? I know a lot of places in St Andrews, couple of pubs, the Vic St Andrews. Send me burger vouchers, please. No, I've given you a plug on YouTube. They sort of have a poster that says, we can sponsor your sports team. Would you just send them an email? Would you go in? Would you sort of put out a call saying we're looking for a sponsor and see who applies?
I'm not entirely sure how we went about it, to be honest. I don't know whether the Cornish Bakehouse reached out to us or we reached out to them, to be quite honest, because I was quite new to the club when it kind of was all getting pulled through. So I'm not entirely sure of the details. How we came together.
I think we've lost Han, actually.
Right.
Hopefully she'll be back soon. But I suppose we should move on from there to the community submission. Sorry we couldn't really answer the what makes the how would you find a sponsor question, but unfortunately none of us really know. So fundraising strategies, I suppose we've got, fundraising strategies that work for existing clubs. Hannah mentioned the fact that she's got the fact that Keele are a very sort of established club to use the popularity of their players to bring it in. But what would you do for a new club to bring in money at the very beginning? Because, it is a bit of an outlay, because you've got to get the balls, the hoops, I mean, especially the balls, because that's a big issue, especially if you have to sort of bring them over from the States if you want the proper beta match point balls. Although I suppose Blue Hawk makes things different now that you don't need to have DIY qualifications to make your own hoops. So do you have sort of anything to input there on sort of an initial money front?
Yeah, maybe teams are already doing this. I don't know, but when I was sort of thinking about this question, I thought about perhaps the idea of existing teams that are nearby, perhaps, and so on, whilst they're building a sort of reputation. When they get more players, obviously they'll have more money coming to the club and so on. And hopefully, it grows exponentially from there, and just to sort of have the established teams prop up fledgling teams, and then of course they'll get the return on their investment, whether that investment's time or money, when they've got a new neighbouring team that they can train with and play friendlies against and so on. And just the kind of, and that will potentially foster growth in a way that it's, you know, the more times a team helps start up another team, then the more teams there'll be for the next kind of team needs help in starting up, you know, and it just, I think the process will become potentially easier and easier, sort of snowball effect. Maybe there's already teams doing that. I don't know. We're so far away from any other team that we can't really do that. We're kind of out the loop. But yeah, that was my thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, so almost sort of a hooch initiative.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Sort of, yeah. And it's sort of oh, Hannah's back, fantastic.
Yeah.
But we can ask Hannah. So we moved on to the community submissions, and just wondering if you had any input on a new fundraising for a new club, because of course it's a big outlay with needing hoops, and balls, and cones, and place to train if you need pitch hire.
I don't know what's just been said, obviously, but I guess appealing to clubs who have maybe got extra equipment, so you could have any of their kind of old stuff. I know obviously it's not ideal, but it means that you'll have something to start off with. And then just maybe, I know, I think it was Leeds who did this, they kind of set up a campaign to raise money to get hoops. So raising money for a specific thing so that people are aware of what you're trying to do, whether you do that again within your kind of union or your local town or something like that. Because people kind of quite like to know what the money's going towards. If you're just raising generic money, sometimes people are a bit less inclined to give something. But if they know that it's going towards buying a ball, then they might be like, oh, okay, we'll have £3 then rather than 20p or something.
Yeah, so directed fundraising. That's quite a good point actually, because when people, if you go, oh, would please give us some money, a lot of people are like, well, what are you going to use my money for?
Yeah,
whereas if you say,
yeah.
You say, please give us money, we need new hoops. Our old hoops are hula hoops with some gaffer tape and a T-junction on them.
Yeah.
Was what I was wearing. way back in the mists when I started playing. Yeah, and I suppose linked to that is there a possibility for QUK to help teams and their finances? Could there be a startup grant for QUK to use some of the fees that they bring in through membership to, you know, buy hoops for, you know, beginning teams?
Or even sort of have a starter kit that they could lend out to a beginning team so they have good equipment. Fail is that a team and they just crumble. If you get the equipment, you can get somebody to come and help you, and then you can sort of focus on doing your own fundraising to get your own equipment. If Team UK, Quidditch UK even had sort of like a kit that they could give people to borrow for, you know, 6 months or whatever until they get on their feet, and then they lend it back again. That would be possibly really helpful. And personally, I'd be quite happy for my membership money to go towards that rather than getting free water bottles at BQC because I was a volunteer.
Yeah, that's very good. But I would, because the team fee is 50. I think it's £50, or it was when I was.
Yeah, I think so. And then a secondary team is a little bit less, but because you've already got a team there.
Yeah, no. To register a team is £50, and then you pay your own individual dues, which is slightly less. Obviously, individual, and then you've got your funds, which of course mostly go to BQC. But I personally would agree with you. I'd quite like to see sort of maybe a discounted starter kit, so they go chat to Blue Hawk, because they do have a partnership with Blue Hawk.
Yeah.
And sort of say, all right, we'll take these, we'll pay face value for them, and then we'll give starter teams, I don't know, 40-50% off maybe.
Exactly, something like that.
Ease that hit, and maybe they could delay it.
Yeah.
Gavin, have you got anything to add to this? Do you think any UK could do anything for starter teams or even established teams?
No, I completely agree with what's been said so far. I don't think I've got more to add to say to that. I completely agree. Having sort of bits you can lend out to teams that they got to begin with, I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah. So if you're watching QUK. We, as a selection of Quidditch people, we'd be fine with a starter kit being, coming out of our membership money, because let's be honest, more teams, more competition. It's more interesting. It's more fun.
Exactly.
We quite like it. So yeah, that's something that we'd quite like to see. Starter. I suppose that's not what this question is meant to do, because this is just like general. This is just general. A team. What could QUK do anything for teams? But I suppose the biggest hit is, of course, the start.
Yeah. I guess for established teams, it's not helping them in terms of giving them money, but balls are quite a big expense if you want to get the good crop of the Baylor ones that come from America. If QuidditchUK sort of did a mass order, which meant that teams weren't forking out sort of the £30 shipping for just 2 balls, they could do a mass order, which meant that it would just cost all the teams collectively a little bit less. Just little things like that, which don't actually give the team money, but save them a little bit, because it all adds up in the end of the day. If we're not spending £40 on getting 1 new ball, that's a bit of money going towards a coach or something like that.
Plus, we can use the nice shiny quaffles at regionals and
exactly.
Yeah. Let's be honest, we all like
that. And it's
that.
nice if we all train with like good proper quaffles, rather than you go to one tournament, you're like, oh gosh. I mean, we've got in our cupboard Hannah Montana balls that we trained on for when I started. Yeah, they're fantastic. Some of our newer players are like, what even are these? And like, these are the original bludgers that they trained with. Yes, they are the size of my hand right now, and they have Hannah Montana on them.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that BQC1, Oxford actually had to borrow St Andrews bludgers, which we had to bring down from Scotland on the bus. And so if everyone could sort of get their own bludgers, the full sort of without, you'd pay the amount,
but without the excessive shipping and stuff. Yeah, you'd kind of split it up. But if 50 people are paying for that shipping rather than one, it's cheaper, isn't it?
Oh yeah, because you're still paying 30 quid shipping.
Exactly.
But it's a lot cheaper. I remember also an ex-St Andrews player actually brought home, from when they went to World Cup 6, brought home a load of shadow chasers just to save
exactly that kind of thing.
Shipping.
Yeah, just that kind of thing. And it makes sense at the time, but if we could do it as a kind of more communal thing rather than just hoping that one of your players goes to America on the off chance, then it would be much more money saving for everyone.
Yeah. Is there anything you think QUK could do for Falmouth, Gavin, in general?
I mean, honestly, I think you've covered everything on that already. I'm conscious that that there potentially could be more useful things to allocate funds to than free stuff at tournaments, whatever. I mean, free stuff at tournaments is nice, but is it going to build the sport? But besides that, yeah, I think QUK kind of got. I haven't got any major criticisms to level at them.
Oh no, certainly no criticisms. It's just this is sort of almost friendly suggestions for how they can improve, because everyone can improve always. So yeah, and this one sort of switches the focus almost, this question, because we've talked a lot about teams, because of course we're all on committees of various different teams, but this one sort of moves it towards the individual. Sort of, how can you make a fantasy tournament cheaper? How can you stop people dropping out of fantasies due to unexpected costs, which, in the long with short of it, means people didn't book travel soon enough, and now they have to pay 3 arms and a kidney to get to Durham on the train, because British Rail's very expensive. Is there a way of making fantasies cheaper?
I reckon you could. I mean, because like you said, it's one of the reasons that it's more expensive perhaps because you're not got that sort of safety net economically having a team. So you're making your own individual bookings and so on. If there's a degree of coordination between individuals going to these fantasy tournaments so that they effectively form travel teams, whether that's organised centrally by the people organising the fantasy or whether players take it upon themselves to do that. I imagine that would be a, carpooling or things like that. Just effective ways of cutting down on buying tickets and to get to places. Just coordination between players instead of everyone desperately making their own kind of route there.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. Maybe you could even sort of stick it on a fantasy sign-up page. Would you sign up for a carpool? Where are you coming from? What's the route you're taking? Which is literally something I thought of 2 seconds ago when you mentioned carpools. But it's maybe something for fantasy organisers to consider in the future, just to sort of help the organisation of travel. Hannah, have you got any ideas?
Oh, I think that's a really good idea, actually. You could sort of say, as a car driver myself, at Merthy, and I took Alex and Sasha, as well as Ben, because getting from London to Oxford and then Oxford to Derby was much cheaper than them getting a train straight from London to Derby. And so it just made sense that I took the 2 extra passengers, as I was already picking Ben up. But if you had some sort of scheme where you could say, like, I've got 3 seats in my car or something, I'll be leaving from this place. I expected, £15 petrol or something, then somebody can work it out if it's going to cost them £40 on the train for the car. If it's going to cost them £5 on the train, then, do a little bit of maths, work it out. And I guess some of it is as well the organisers, of the fantasy tournament, if they know that they've got the set location, publicise it as soon as possible so people can look into travel and accommodation straight away, whether that be staying with friends or Quidditch players who live nearby on their floor, or whether that be booking like the local scout hut or something. The earlier that people know, then the better the deal they can get. So kind of the two-way thing. Be organised yourself, but also if the tournament directors are organised, it always makes things run a bit more smoothly.
Yeah, that is a very good point. I mean, I think there's only so much an organizer can do, especially before sort of fees are paid. I mean, they could possibly talk to hotel chains like we'll
point, might have 500 people coming.
Yeah, we're going to point this massive group of people towards you. Will you please give them a discount?
Yeah.
But there is only so much you can do. A lot sort of falls on the individual. Book early.
Yeah.
And to organisers, get the info out early. Sort of almost 3 months before, if you can.
Particularly the summer ones and stuff, where because like Gavin was saying, team organised transport and stuff is always cheaper. But when term is finished and all of your students have gone back to X, Y, and Z, it's much harder to organise transport, especially if you don't know any Quidditch players who live in the local area to you, or there may be one but you don't know who they are and you'd rather not travel with them, although everyone is lovely. Like if you know that it's going to be a summer tournament, make sure the information's out super early so people can get on it. And if they're not organised, then that's kind of their own fault, I guess.
Yeah.
You did as much as you could.
Yeah, so there's a couple ideas there. Gavin, you got any other one that sort of carpooling, sort of chatting as the organisers?
Sort of setting up some, sort of Facebook group thing for Quidditch travel, for just a community to fire things about and see who's going where when, and kind of like the sort of just a sort of forum for people to communicate on travelling to tournaments and places, so kind of create a sort of community system where everyone helps everyone out.
Yeah.
And that is one of the good things about Quidditch, is that the community is, I suppose it will change as the sport sort of grows larger, but a lot of the time a lot of the people, so I think the community is a fairly close-knit one in the UK at least, which is all I can obviously speak for, having only played in the UK. So yeah, fancy get organised, but also sort of it might be an idea to make a few changes and make everyone's life just a little bit easier. Again, discussions, comments, reactions. I know there's only 6 of you watching, but have a chat. So we're actually down to our last question of the night, and this is from the sort of the last 3 have all been from the same person. So thank you, anonymous person, who asked these questions on last Friday, and they're just wondering if we've sort of reached a saturated market of Indiegogos and replica shirts and all the same perks, because they are remarkably, similar. Thank you card. We'll bring you some cake. We'll sing you a song at World Cup. Can teams sort of hope to make a reasonable profit? And if not, is there an alternative sort of fundraiser to go for to organise things like, travel to next month's World Cup, or if people did it at BQC? So, Gavin, do you want to start us off on that? Do you have any strong feelings towards Indiegogo?
Personally, I don't feel like it's saturated, but I'm an absolute sucker for sort of merchandise, so I'm probably biased. Sort of all the sort of World Cup stuff. I've had to really discipline myself not to buy everything. So it seems to me that just from my perspective that there's definitely an appeal to these sort of Indiegogo things. You donate and get your replica jersey or whatever. I think that's an appealing format. Whether there's too many of them out there, that might be a problem. Because there's definitely some that are successful. Because there was that Team Uganda one was enormously successful from what I gather. But then didn't the Peru one fall flat very fast? And I wonder whether that's perhaps because the Uganda one was so successful, that it kind of stormed the sort of social media thing and kind of maybe detracted from some of the other ones. And there's maybe only room for so many at a time, and timing might be key to whether these things are actually successful.
I think one of the things with the Uganda one was which is essential in an Indiegogo campaign, was fantastic. Their social media campaign was brilliant. John Sensamu has been nurturing it, but that he's been active in a lot of European groups for ages, absolutely. So you see the name pop up every now and again, in your notifications if you've got notifications on. And also they got help from the committee, so Matt Gunzel was sort of Facebooking theirs. Whereas Peru, their social media, it wasn't quite as good. It didn't seem to get the same level of support as the Ugandan one, which is half of the reason it sort of didn't. It didn't go great. And also, I think the Peruvians were a little bit sort of hamstrung by saying that actually they'd drop out before they sort of dropped out and then came back in, which I think created a little bit of confusion. So that might have been a misstep back then. Personally, I agree with you, Gavin, on replica shirts. I love a replica shirt.
Yeah.
But people have sort of different views on what's a good replica shirt, because I've seen a few people who think that the UK kit, it's brilliant kit. I'm not a massive fan of it. But I looked at the Ireland kit and I was like, yes, get in the Ireland kit. So, which I did, and this is all personal, not the opinions of the Quidditch Post in any way, shape, or form. But I think it's a lot of the time it's personal. People have different tastes.
Yeah.
With who your friends are playing for, what your nationality is, as well. With a national sport, you go through this variety in the markets. It's quite good, really. Hannah, do you have anything to add to this? I was going to
say the replica shirts, love them. Obviously, it depends on your budget. For instance, I really wanted the Australian Dropwares one, but there was no way that I could afford 70 Australian dollars or whatever that came out as pounds. So it depends on what people are pricing them at. I mean, unicorns or turkey are always a really good bargain for a shirt, because it's about the standard cost of a shirt here, and it's helping them fundraise. Personally, I think Indiegogo itself, though, however, is highly overused for what people are often giving. The shirts are great, but often, like the little small perks, no one really cares about having a thank you or a personalised email or a personalised postcard, which is why they don't get bought, open, which is why it's only the people with the kind of the big amounts of money who can afford the shirts that get in the money. Like I think a lot of the money that came in for Team Uganda was for the bigger priced items or just kind of general one-off donations. In terms of a small team trying to fundraise, they should perhaps maybe focus on, rather than going Indiegogo if they haven't got some merch to offer, doing things like the cake sales and quizzes and stuff like that, which are just as easy to do, but a lot more rewarding in terms of what they get back. And a bit more fun as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there are, you can still fundraise offline in the real world, as opposed to sort of relying on an Indiegogo. Something that I've literally just remembered about Uganda is as well they sort of targeted teams. I say targeted to that thing. I don't mean that, but they've sort of focused on teams. So they've sort of gone, do your team want to sponsor a Ugandan player to get them boots?
Yeah.
So you're saying decent pair of boots, you're paying 30 quid, 20 quid, I think they were asking. It wasn't a massive amount, especially if you have 20 odd active members. That's 2 quid, 3 quid.
Each, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think we asked 3 quid from everyone because I'm fairly sure we sponsored one Ugandan players as St Andrews or as like a Scottish group with Edinburgh, and so that's something that I think that's untapped. Getting a group of sort of aiming at a group of people saying, do you want to sponsor a player as a team? And then you sort of getting people putting you can afford 2 quid because it's a pint or
exactly,
pint, depending on where you live.
Yeah.
You can afford 2 quid, and you're throwing that in, and then you're getting a fairly decent sum of money, the same as you would get from a shirt, someone buying a shirt, but it's more diffuse.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that's a little tip that I thought worked really, really well for Uganda.
Yeah, and it means that for some people who can't necessarily afford the shirt themselves, a team can then go and make a difference. I myself can't necessarily afford to go and spend £50 on X, Y, and Z shirt, but I can give £5 to each different thing, making a difference. Buying football boots for one team or something else for another team, and knowing that I've helped them fundraise, but actually make a difference. And I guess the Uganda one was quite special because it was such a kind of prolific campaign, and it was bringing a whole team here. It wasn't just kind of we know that team's going to go anyway. It would just help them a little bit.
Yes, that's very.
It was
very
all
true.
or nothing, wasn't it?
Yeah. So get your social media out there. Know who your market is. And yeah, I mean, because a lot of Quidditch players, because it is still quite a young sport in Europe, a lot of Quidditch players are students. Students are poor. By and large, students don't have disposable income because rent is much, and they'd rather spend it on booze because stereotypes. I'm still a student. You can't shout at me, does it? Anything further to add to the discussion there, Gavin?
Well, I think I've said everything I could think of, really. Yeah.
Right, so I actually think we've covered quite a lot of ground here today. This will be available. We don't have any more questions, unfortunately, and we're also out of time. We're about to come up to being out of time. We've timed it really quite well, which is new because normally this sort of thing overruns. So I'm quite happy with that. It's quite a decent outing. This will be available as YouTube. On YouTube after we finish the broadcast, hopefully pretty quickly after. So yeah, we've covered a lot. I think we've covered everything from teams to international stuff, how you can fundraise in different ways. So thanks everyone for watching, all 5 of you that have been here to the end. Hopefully more people will watch it on YouTube and use it as an educational resource, because that's the point of these things. They're QUK and the Post as well, coming together to create an educational resource for teams to use in the future. And I hope we have helped give you some ideas. I know I've come away with some more different things that we can sort of implement. So yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed my evening. So thank you to Hannah and Gavin for joining me, and we will see you, well, maybe not we, but Knights at the Round Table will be back in 2 months' time with a topic that I'm not sure about. I'm sure Bidwell will publicise in the run-up. So please do get involved, because this, the Wild QUK do suggest questions. Half of today's content was from you, the viewers. We had 20 minutes scheduled for QUK stuff and then half an hour scheduled for you. So this is for you, it's for the community. Get involved with this, and we'll see you in 2 months' time. Thank you very much for watching. Good night.